Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. Yes, it is me, Garrett Zatlin, your co-host here at the Blue Oval Podcast and at the Stride Report. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, Garrett. If you're watching on YouTube, it's just you, Garrett. Where's everyone else? Well, Ben could not make it today. How dare he? Tried to get Mara on, just a bad day for her that couldn't work. And then I tried to get Scotty on. Some technical issues, couldn't make it work. So guess what? I'm doing a solo podcast. Hello. So it's just me today. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't worry. I will not make you just watch me. I'll try to add a few graphics just to spice it up a little bit. And if you're just listening on your phone, on your favorite podcast platform, two things. Sorry, you're just going to hear me today. But two, also go leave us a rating and review. Spotify, Apple. If you're on YouTube, go subscribe there now on YouTube. I believe we got one rating and one review each on Apple and Spotify the last time I checked. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please go leave another rating and review if you haven't already. So please, we would really, really appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is just going to be a solo podcast today, just me. I wish I had something a little bit more prepared. Sorry, again, last minute thing. You got to make these things work. Recording, on April 10th. What we're going to do today, going to go over a little bit of news that we broke last week, and then we're going to go over some of the results. Luckily, this week was a little bit lighter in terms of results, so we'll make this, I don't want to say a short podcast, but I can't imagine it'll be anything too crazy long. Of course, I've said that before, and I just ramble on for hours and hours and hours. Not really, but you get what I'm saying. So let's start, however, with the news. And that's Natalie Cook. I'm sure as many of you probably know by now, last week the Stride Report reported that Natalie Cook, the Oklahoma State phenom freshman, she has entered the transfer portal. And this is big news. For those who are not familiar with Natalie Cook, which is odd if you're listening to this podcast, but if for some reason you are not, she was a high school distance running phenom, 1525 for 5,000 meters as a high school senior. She was a two-time national champion within a week of each other on the cross-country course, ran these blazing fast times. Went to Oklahoma State during her freshman year of cross-country this past fall. She was the winner of the Cowboy Jamboree, upsetting a big field as a true rookie, and then was seventh at the NCAA XC Championships again as a true rookie. Phenomenal freshman campaign on the grass. She then goes to the indoor oval, runs 15:24 for 5,000 meters, setting the indoor 5K U20 American record. Phenomenal. However, Cook does then not race for the rest of the winter months. She tries to race in a 3K, I believe at the Husky Classic, is a DNF there, then goes to the indoor national meet, attempts to run the 5K, and finishes last, unfortunately. Clearly something was off with her this past winter. Recently comes out, again, something that we reported here at the Stride Report, that Natalie Cook then is dealing with a navicular stress reaction in her foot. So interesting to kind of see how that plays into everything that we're seeing right now with this move. A sudden and unexpected, at least from my perspective, move for her to enter the transfer portal. Again, from an outsider's perspective, I was not expecting this, right? I get it. She has an injury, right? It was not the prettiest indoor track season. It was basically non-existent. But for someone who was having as much success as she was, right? And you kind of look at all the times that she was running and how well she was in the fall, and you kind of go through it all and you're like, oh man, I don't know. She seemed pretty complimentary of her team and her teammates, her coaches after the NCAA XC championships. I understand a lot can change in 4 to 5 months, but I'm kind of looking at this like, wow, really? That surprised me, right? That was not something that I was expecting at all. But of course, there can be 1,000 different reasons, right? It's not always related to track. It can be, for whatever. It could be, as Scotty Lotland, my fellow colleague here at the Stride Report, it could be she didn't like the cafeteria food, right? No one outside of her circle really knows why. And I think we should stop pretending like we do unless we actually know her. So, but for whatever the reason is, it's an interesting move because now it opens the door and it has a bunch of different effects and ripple effects throughout the NCAA. Oklahoma State, according to TFRS, was going to return everyone from last year's fourth place podium lineup, which is significant. And if they return everyone, you'd have to think that they have some shot at the national title, just kind of like they did this past fall, except I'd give them more of a shot, right? I think NC State actually returns a handful of their women. I feel like New Mexico probably returns a handful of their women. But you kind of add a few more women in there, some like really good freshman recruiting class. I would have thought Oklahoma State had a realistic shot of getting in there. Now, I don't know if Taylor Rowe would have returned. She's listed as a junior on TFER's for cross country. Whether or not that was actually going to be the case, I'm not entirely sure, but I do believe she would have returned again, according to TFER's. And so now with Natalie Cook potentially and likely transferring out of that program, you're now wondering, A, how does Oklahoma State replenish their scoring at the very top? And B, where are they now in that conversation? Are they still a national title contending team? Probably not, but people also forget that Bilal Chapkuri was really good last fall and just had a bad cross-country national league performance. She effectively is not, in terms of scoring, she's not that much further off from Natalie Cook when they're both at their best. Now, granted, they would need more back-end support. They would need things of that nature, but I don't think it's going to be as dramatic of as a fall off in cross-country as maybe some people think. Now, are they national title contenders like maybe we thought they could be? Well, depending on what happens with some of their new runners and who they bring in and how some people develop, I don't know if I'm there yet. I don't know if I would say that yet, but still, I think it's important just to consider that Bilal Chapkuri at her best is the scoring differential is not that much dramatically worse. So something to keep in mind there. Now, that said, let's think about what this means for Natalie Cook and the other schools that she could look at here. I think the obvious one that everyone thinks about as a potential landing spot is UCLA. It's very obvious, right? Sean Brosnan, the superstar coach, formerly of Newbury Park, obviously worked well with high octane youngsters like Natalie Cook. He's gone after Mia Barnett, a superstar underclassman, gone after Sam McDonald, another high school star in her own right. Formerly, he did coach her at Newbury Park. And now Natalie Cook, another long distance superstar, transfer portal, youngster, big name, kind of has that iconic star power behind her. It feels like Sean Brosnan and UCLA are the options. Brosnan has not been shy in terms of going after top talents. You have to imagine that with a young and upcoming group, that would be an attractive spot for Natalie Cook. But you also have to wonder, like, hey, is this a spot where she wants to be, right? Because this is a developing, rising program. It's not going to be a cross-country juggernaut like Oklahoma State was. It's far less established. As good as Sam McDonald and Mia Barnett are/can be, they alone are not going to make UCLA a nationally competitive team in terms of like a top 10 roster or in terms of a podium team like Oklahoma State is and can be. So it's maybe that has to be something to be considered. But UCLA does seem like a really interesting option. And then it also wonders, it's like, well, what about Texas? Like, she is a Texas native. You have to wonder what the schools there are like. But frankly, I don't see any distance juggernaut like Oklahoma State or any program rising like UCLA that would be able to offer her the competitive space like UCLA or like Oklahoma State, right? Texas is probably not really a spot for her. They have not been exactly great on the longer distance side. Texas A&M, kind of a similar case there, very similar programs. There's not really any other distance program that comes to my mind in the state of Texas that really stands out. Again, I could be wrong. I have no idea in terms of like where she could land, but I don't feel like there's any realistic spot in the state of Texas. Could Arkansas be an option? Maybe. It's not completely unrealistic. They go after transfers before they've done it. They have a very young and upcoming squad. They have money to invest, and like they're going to be a team of the future. And they have all the history and all the staff and all the support. Could Arkansas be that one? SEC. It's just something to think about. Again, I don't know where she looked at previously when she was in high school. I saw Notre Dame floated around. Maybe that's a good spot for her. Don't know if that would actually be where she'd actually go. Just telling you what I saw, right? But I don't know if that's exactly the spot that I would know or think of her landing. So it's tough to say. But if I had to guess, I'd say UCLA. Part of me wants to say Virginia. I feel like Virginia's like, hey, if we can just replace Mia Barnett with Natalie Cook, we're legitimately back in the podium conversation for cross country. And we get to round out our roster a little bit. Instead of having these 800-mile specialists, we get to have someone who can attack the 5K, 10K, right? Add some diversity to that roster. They get to go have someone who can be competitive at their very best with the top women of NC State. Maybe not Caitlin Toohey. I don't think anyone can be competitive with Caitlin Toohey in that respect. But something to think about. Again, these are just ideas that I have. But yeah, that's all I really have there on that end. So who knows? Be very exciting. I feel like I just have a hunch. I don't know this for sure that we're going to find out sooner rather than later. I feel like this might be a pretty quick turnaround, but we'll see what happens. Also, there's a handful of other great names in the transfer portal. We'll probably report on that when we have a free day, either later this week or some other time. But watch out for that. So. All right, that's Natalie Cook. That's the news. 10 minutes in, which is exactly how much I wanted to spend on that. Now we'll move to some of the results. Where do we want to start first, guys? Let's go Duke Invitational. Now, I don't know how many of you guys watched that race. Duke is not to blame. The Pacers are not to blame. That weather sucked. That was not great weather. It was not good. It was pouring rain. It was pretty chilly. It was not a great look. Not crazy wind from what I was told, but generally speaking, not great. The pacer for the men was supposed to go out in 156. I had them timed around 158. So you were looking at about a 338-ish, I think was the pacing. Regardless, it didn't really matter. No one was really going to attack it in the same way that maybe a Maris Tenissima did on the women's side. But on the men's side, that was a loaded field. And Liam Murphy looked awesome. I'm such a big fan of his. He's a New Jersey native, goes to Villanova. This dude's so explosive, so dynamic, so prepared for any race scenario. He puts himself directly at the front, makes his big move, on the final straight going into the last lap. He goes from basically the back to the front, takes the lead, and then just kicks again around that final curve. Is able to fend off Nick Foster, who puts together a nice finish of his own. Heck of a race. I mean, a great race by Liam Murphy. I mean, he took down his own teammates Sean Dolan and Charlie O'Donovan. He took down the UNC trio of Parker Wolf and Ethan Strand and Jesse Hunt. He took down Nick Dahl. He took down Mael Goyette. He took down James Lee. He took down Nick Foster. He took down a loaded field. He took down Parker Stokes as well. What a run by Liam Murphy. I mean, the 7:45 3K that he ran this past winter, he ran 3:55 in the mile. There's just a lot of firepower. I'll be really interested to see what he can do in the fall. He's clearly at a different level. I'll be interested to see how his skill set translates to the more longer distance aerobic centric racing that is, the 8K and 10K on the grass. But man, I kind of like him as an All-American pick in the 15 right now. I think he's a 3K guy, but I think he can effectively move down to the 15 of the mile without too much issue. I'd be interested. I don't think he's at the 5K yet. I think maybe junior, senior year, he kind of gets there. But yeah, I really like Liam Murphy, and it showed, right? Nick Foster, 342 for second place. Parker Wolf, I believe 342 as well. That was for third place. Good runs. I mean, I think positionally they were really solid. Nick Foster quietly puts together another really solid performance. He doesn't have the upper tier firepower of running 339 or 338 or 337. And I think in this day and age, in this era, you kind of need that if you're really going to be competitive. You saw that this past winter, right? He was ninth in the finals in the mile at the NCAA Indoor Championships. He has all the intangibles, Nick Foster does. But the Michigan Ace needs just a little more firepower. And I think he'll probably get there. Like, I think he's definitely going to run 339 this year. I just don't know. And this is not me like insinuating anything, but I just don't know if he's going to run 338 or 337. I'm not suggesting that he's not. I'm not suggesting that he will. I just don't know. So we'll see how that goes. But I do like Nick Foster. And then Parker Wolf, I'm not going to read too much into this result. He's a 5K, 10K guy. I don't know if he'll pursue the 10K this year. I would think he would. Think that's it might eventually be his best event. But it was nice speed, nice turnover. He was competitive, a little more competitive than I thought he would be, but roughly about right. And then the rest of the field just struggled. Like there was just no one who was capable of really being able to stick around towards the tail end. Like Nick Dahl made a move to the front at some point in the latter half of that race. Never really stuck around. It just wasn't anyone's race, right? So I'm not going to look too heavily into this as in terms of poor races. So yeah, I'm not going to fault anyone for that. Not in that field, not in those conditions. Just one of those days, man. Just one of those days. So, all right, let me pull up a few of these other results. I just want to make sure I get the women's results right. Women's race was basically the Ameris-Tenissima show. NC State star, recent transfer from Alabama. She ran 4:32 in the mile unattached recently this past winter. Obviously, everyone knows her as this dynamic cross-country All-American, mile All-American. Just ran 4:12 for 1,500 meters at the Raleigh Relays. Thought she could come in here and run around 4:10 if the pacing was correct. Obviously, things did not work out with the weather. But Tenissima, she was the only one who went with the pacer, Angel Picarillo, and they came through not only on pace, but roughly faster than that, about 2:12. I roughly had them at. And for a while through all of this race, you're like, why is no one going with Tenissima? Are they just going to let her win this race? Because she goes into the final lap and she's on pretty decent pace. Yeah, maybe she's slowing down a little bit, but there's a pretty significant gap. And I'm trying to figure out, like, when are you going to go get her? And the answer to that was with about 250 meters left in the race, where Amina Matug and the rest of the pack, Sam Trent of Michigan was in there. They start chasing after Tenissima, and Tenissima's fading really hard. And on the final curve, the entire pack catches Tenissima. Matug makes a big move to the front. She surges. It looks like she's probably going to win. And then Tran just opens up her stride. She strides incredibly well, just cruises past Matug, takes home the win in a very tactical 4:18. Matug gets a 4:18 mark. And Tenissima does falter a good bit to sixth place in 4:22. The rest of the pack, no one else ran faster than 4:21. Margaret Liebeck ran 4:21 in third place. Carly Hansen of North Carolina in 4:21. Anna Ewell of Michigan in 4:21. Again, Tenissima 4:22 for sixth place there. Here's the thing. We as fans of the sport cannot ask athletes to go out hard and to attack fast paces and to go with the pacers, even in unideal conditions, and then try to be critical of them if it doesn't work out. What Tenissima did was a really brave move. No one else did it, and she was the only one who actually tried to make this race fast. Did it work out for her? No. But is it commendable? And do we know that she's fit? She ran 4:32. Like, she's okay. So I'm not going to fault Tenissima at all for this. She just ran 4:12 at the Raleigh Relays the other weekend. Again, these were bad conditions. She was the only one brave enough to go with the pacer. It didn't work out, but for a while there, it looked like it might have worked out. And I think that needs to be commended if you're Ameris-Tenissima. So other than that, Sam Tran of Michigan, great race. Great race. She ran 4:34 in the mile this past winter. I really like that result. Then she came to the outdoor oval, ran 15:52 5K PR at the Raleigh Relays, now steps up. Yes, it was a slow race. 4:18 is nothing, crazy. But to take down Amina Matug and the rest of this field, like, this is not an easy field. Again, Tenissima's in there. Like, there's a lot of great women. To take them down like she did, it's impressive stuff. Like, the momentum is clearly breaking in her favor for Sam Tran. And she's doing all the small things right. She's not perfect, right? Like, she didn't have the best Big Ten showing, but I like the progress she's making, Like, if she continues to keep up these kind of streak of performances, right? She needs to get a little bit faster. But her 4:34 mile PR says she can get to a very nationally competitive level. So I could absolutely see her. In fact, I would, at this point in the season, be surprised almost if she didn't get out of the, I think, East region for regionals and into the NCAA championships over 1500 meters. I think that's definitely going to be her main event. She ran 4:14 for 1500 meters back in 2021, I believe. But I think she's probably in 4:11, 4:12 shape, based on what I've seen here at least. So great race for her. Don't sleep on her. And then Amina Matug here. Listen, again, like it's poor conditions. It's hard to really gauge, these kind of performances. It's not. It's the second performance where I'm like, oh, I thought we could have gotten a little bit more from Matug, right? Super dynamic during the winter months. Superstar, 429 mile conversion, national title favorite. Takes a little bit of an ambitious approach at the national meet. Goes out hard, fades, still salvages a 7th place All-American finish in the mile. And then tactically, just slight misstep in this race, or just Trent just had a better race. I'm not going to look too heavily into this, but for the next race for Matug, I'm really hoping that I get a little bit more fireworks. The last 2 races have left me wanting a little bit more. Am I concerned? No, I'm not. But something to consider there. So, all right, let's move on. We've got a few more headlines. I think that was the main race of the weekend, despite it being a little bit slower in terms of competition. That was a really solid field on both the men's and women's side. Izzy Thornton-Bott. This didn't happen this past weekend, but it happened the week before at the Australian U20 and Open Championships. Izzy Thornton-Bott of Oregon ran 4:08 for 1500 meters. And here's the thing. I think we knew she was good, right? I don't think anyone would have been surprised if, she was an All-American this past winter. She was 9th in the mile finals at the NCAA Indoor Championships. Right. Like, and, it's very clear that she could have been an All-American. Super dynamic. Was a cross-country All-American as well. So, like, everyone knows that she's talented. But to go from 4:32 in the mile to now 4:08 for 1500 meters. Granted, in a very fast field, right? I mean, she was 6 overall. Jessica Hull was the winner in 4:04, I believe. I mean, that's impressive, right? Do I think she's a national title contender yet? No, I don't. I don't know if I'm just there yet. And maybe that's unfair, but I think I just need to see a little bit more, in terms of performances of that caliber on a more consistent basis. Who is she taking down? That Australian field is not going to be anything like what she sees in the NCAA, although it has the potential to be just as fast. Maybe. The 4:04 is pretty quick. So we'll see what happens, but love that result for Thornton-Bott. It's huge. It shows that she's gone from 4:32 to 4:08. To me, that's another leap in fitness. And that shows me that she still has a high ceiling that she hasn't yet tapped. And if I'm someone fighting for an All-American spot, I'm not too excited to see that result from my West Coast counterpart. Because Thornton-Bott's dangerous. She can move up in distance. She has pretty decent leg speed in the 800 meters. She's usually pretty consistent. Like her 9th place finish at the Indoor Championships this past winter, maybe the worst race of her season. Maybe. I'd have to go back and check. But if that's the worst race of her season, better be careful. So again, don't think she's a national title contender yet, but something to monitor. Definitely something to monitor. I would have been curious to see what Ben thought about that result. I feel like Ben would have said she's a national title contender now. Ben, if you're listening to this, sorry, dude. Let's move on. Michaela Rose drops a 2 flat over 800 meters. She's the top time on the national leaderboard. The time itself is not anything surprising, right? We've seen this happen for Michaela Rose, LSU. She was a national title contender in my eyes this past winter. I think she still is a national title contender. She's not the favorite like Juliette Whitaker and Roisin Willis are. Roisin Willis, excuse me. I know I always get that name wrong. But I still think she's a contender for the title. Like, you look, though, at her consistency, about how incredible she's been this year. It's one thing to go from good, skip great, and then go to elite in terms of times. But she's hit the elite tier and then stayed there consistently every time she's run the 800 meters. She's gone under 2:02 for the half mile 5 times. 5 times. That's more than Willis and Whitaker. I mean, that's insane. I mean, granted, has Rose run as fast? No, maybe not. But 5 times in what? 4 months? 3.5 months? Under 202? Like that's all-time stuff. It's really impressive. She's gone 201.66, 2 flat 18, 201.09, 2 flat .85 at altitude. That was the NCAA Indoor Championships where she placed third. And then most recently, 2 flat .34. And oh, by the way, she split 158 on a 4x8, I believe, the week before. Whitaker and Willis are still the national title favorites, undoubtedly. But Rose is still very much a legitimate threat. I think she's the only threat. I don't know if I'm ready to say Seymour's there yet. Seymour's been running very well. But man, I mean, it's impressive stuff. Because here's the thing. If Rose is running 158X in a split, it means she has a good shot of running sub 2 in the open. And if that happens, I would be very careful. Am I saying that I'm picking her to win the national title? No, I'm not. But she's still very much in the conversation despite what you saw this past winter. She might have to be a little bit better with her tactics. I'll say that. There's certain moves that I didn't totally love that in retrospect I would have maybe done differently. Granted, I'm not talented, but like you kind of get where I'm going here, right? So watch out there for Rose. All right. Speaking of 800s, Olivia Howell, the mile indoor national champion this past winter, runs 202 at her home meet. That's a little under a 2-second PR, easily crushes the field. We're now at an interesting point, and I made this comparison in our First Thoughts article. I feel like Howell is very similar now to Michaela DeGeneiro from Colorado last year, who won the mile indoor national title, and she was second in the 1,500 meters at the NCAA Outdoor Championships, again, all in 2022. How, much like DeGeneiro, was kind of an unexpected national title winner in the mile, right? I think we all knew she was talented. She was a veteran. She was great tactically. I think we knew she could run fast, but I don't think anyone, I don't think she was anyone's first pick to win the mile national title, right? But it happened. We were all pleasantly surprised. And now we have to wonder as we go into the outdoor national meet, like, okay, should we expect the same thing? Was that a fluke? It seems hard for that to be a fluke when she ran as fast as she did at altitude. I believe it was 434 flat at altitude, which probably converts to under 430. I'm pretty confident for Howell, that is. And they're kind of similar runners in that sense in terms of what their identity is and how we view them. Like, I wonder how many, if we took a poll, how many people would say that Howell is the national title favorite for 1,500 meters in their eyes? Let's say 2, he doesn't run it, right? Who would you choose? Are you going with Lauren Gregory? Because Gregory still feels a little bit like the smarter, safer answer, right? But I mean, how at this point, like what she's running 202, right? So it kind of validates what she just did on the indoor oval, winning gold. And now it's like, hey, we might not have a choice whether or not you believe, how fluky or unfluky that national title win was. Like she's giving you more and more of a reason to believe like that wasn't a fluke. That was the real thing. And now it's kind of like DeGeneiro where it's like, maybe it's time to really start believing that like she's just catching fire, she's building momentum, and she's now beginning to complement the greatest aspects of her resume, the experience, the consistency, the tactics, just the understanding of her competition. She's beginning to complement all of that with firepower, fast times, big time, races and performances. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting there. All right, let's move on there. Steeplechase, Yasmin Ostrich of Lamar, Lydia Oliver of Villanova, and Victoria Patterson of Columbia. They all go sub 10 in the steeplechase, each at different meets. They each take home wins. I'm going to quickly go through this. I don't think there's a ton to sit on here. We'll start with Patterson. Great race for her. She's really solid. I really like her a lot. I think she has a lot of potential to be very dangerous. I think it was just a nice result for her. She's slowly picking up some decent momentum. would watch her. I don't know if I'm really ready to say like, oh, she's definitely making it to the national meet, but she could. Like, it would not surprise me in the slightest. I feel like the steeplechase, so with that kind of time, 9:56. Same with Oliver. I mean, it seems, especially in the East region, that seems like a pretty good bet. I don't know if Vegas has lines for that. They don't. But if I was a betting man, and I can because I'm not in the NCAA, so don't bet if you are in the NCAA. But I would probably put money that Patterson will probably make it out of the regional meet and into the national meet for the steeplechase. And not just because of this performance, but because of how well she's been running separately. Lydia Oliveira, big race for her. She's been a little quiet as of late, but she's really good. Like, when she's at her best and when she's firing on all cylinders, she's really good. She went to the Duke Invite. Again, wasn't the fastest weekend for the Duke Invite, but she ran 9:56. Took down a pretty decent field. Not the best field, but a decent field. Like, Sasha Naglia of North Carolina was in that field. Defeated her relatively comfortably. Again, not a PR, but like, watch out, because Oliveira is definitely one of those women who just takes a step up when she's in the steeplechase. And she's been okay as of late, but she hasn't been firing on all cylinders. This performance makes me think like maybe she might be getting back to that top form. So something to watch there. And then Yasmin Ostrich of Lamar. She is someone to keep an eye out for. According to TFers, 204 for 800 meters, 419 for 1500 meters. I think she can run faster than 419. I think she can at least run 415, at least. And now just post 9:52 in the steeplechase in what was basically a solo effort, unless the two women from two other schools weren't pacing, and I don't think they were. Then that was a completely solo effort. 9:52 in the steeplechase destroyed it wasn't close, like it wasn't a competition. Ostrich is someone to really keep an eye on. Like, she's extremely dynamic. She's being competitive in a handful of fields. Granted, they're not the most competitive fields compared to what she'll face at the West Regional meet. But man, I would watch out for her. A lot of dynamic nature there. 204, 952. I would love to find someone. I would love to know how many other women in the NCAA right now have that kind of middle distance speed, but also have that kind of steeplechase turnover. And here's the thing, 952 in the steeplechase all alone, she's comfortably able to run in the 940s in that case if she's actually pushed. And she responds well to that kind of field, right? I would be very careful of Ostrich. She's one of those women who just shows all the subtle signs. She's due for a breakout performance even greater than what we've seen right now. I would not sleep on her. The only thing is that she's still relatively inexperienced at this level, and she's in the West region. Got something to keep in mind there. So, all right, let's move on here. We'll see what else we got here. I don't think there's a whole lot more that I wanted to discuss. Yeah, I just got some 800s here. Handel Robon, Penn State, 147. Teammate Oliver Dos Muelas, 148. Took down, I believe, Alex Sellis of LSU. Not a surprise. I mean, Robon has always been really good. Like, this is not a surprise, to anyone. So you're not surprised there. And Amon Zahafi of Miami runs 147 as well. Literally nothing new, right? We know Zahafi's great. We know he's talented during the regular season. Still got to see in the postseason. Still got to see better tactics. It'll come. I am convinced it'll come for him. I don't know when that's going to be, but it'll come. So that's kind of all I got. I think that's it. All right. If you haven't already, go check out the site. We got new D1 rankings up, men's and women's top 25. We included a lot of steeplechase and 10K specials in there. So the orders aren't entirely what you think they were from the NCAA Indoor Championships, or at least after that, I should say. So go check that out on the site. Go subscribe on YouTube. Go leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe there as well. Also subscribe. That'd be great. Thank you. I'm trying to think what else. We got Lane 9 video interview from Lindsey Cunningham about 2 weeks ago. We're working on a few more of those, a few things in the works. We're just trying to get scheduling down. We are probably going to have some high school content next week or two. I like to think so, at least. More of that there. We're trying to bolster that a little bit. And then some previews for Brian Clay. A lot of Brian Clay stuff. So That's all I got. Make sure to leave a rating, review, and that's it. All right. I'll talk to you guys later.